Why does creative matter so much for paid social success?
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so here we are. I'm in the host chair once again. I'm joined with Matt.
How are you feeling?
I'm getting used to it.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's a bit daunting sometimes, but you know, we'll power on through. But I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of who you are, because you've done that with Aaron so far. So if you are wondering who this person is and you've never seen a Tea Talks with them in before, then go back and watch the episode with Aaron and Matt. Give us a very one-sentence line of what that episode was about.
So me and Aaron, on our first podcast together, we spoke about the importance of paid social and how effective that can be for businesses wanting to grow.
Nice. Very, very nice. But
Yeah.
Today, I'm here, and that means we're talking about creative with paid social. So, more importantly, why creative is so important for paid social.
Yes.
So, why is it?
I think it's worth mentioning the shift that's sort of been happening over the last year or so now.
Yeah.
It's not new, but I think there's some advertisers that are still kind of not catching up with it. And essentially, if we talk Meta, to start with, all the other channels are basically doing the same as Meta.
Okay.
So, what Meta, since iOS 14 was released and, you know, people were opting out of being advertised to and not being able to share that data as effectively, Meta's got really good at kind of AI and machine learning, and essentially now kind of like knows more about how to target the people that we want to target than kind of we do. We still give them kind of, you know, a steer on that. But essentially, you know, interest-based targeting has gotten smaller. There's less things that we can target from an interests perspective, with cookies going away and things like that, and introducing AI. So what Meta references that as Advantage Plus. So it could be Advantage plus budget, Advantage plus placements, ad enhancements, things like that. So essentially it's arming businesses with tools to get them onto the platform to start advertising, basically, just making it easier for them to be able to do that.
Interesting.
Which creates not a problem, but the more advertisers that are on there, the more important creative becomes for us to stand out.
Well, and that leads on to my next question then, is how can people stand out? How can creative help those ads stand out?
Yeah, so I think the first part really for us when we're thinking about creative is to really understand the audience.
Okay.
Especially if we're saying now that we can't target as granularly. Like 2017, it was like, okay, let's do like loads of like ad sets and targeting and all these different audiences and things like that. We still have control over that sort of thing. But I would say probably 60% now of an effective ad is actually, and in the targeting is actually in the creative.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good for me.
Exactly. We're going to have lots of fun working together on this, because essentially my role is to be a creative strategist. So looking at the data to then work with you to go, okay, this is what's working and this isn't what's working. So that's why creative is so important. But to get to the point of knowing what creative to use, we need to understand the audience.
So does that mean then that sort of almost scroll stopping effect that you can have is more important than it's ever been before?
Exactly, yeah. Because I think what we tend to do, and it is important, is ultimately these businesses want to make money, right? So we'll look at KPIs like cost per acquisition or ROAS and things like that, which ultimately, that is the commercials, that's the money. But what's in our control as an agency and with you and I is looking at things like hook rates and so that's the stopping the scroll, how long people stay on a video for. We know statistically that if the longer that people stay on a video for, the more likely they are to go and convert, right?
Of course.
So post-click, we've got website optimizations and things like that, which is not as easy or within as much as our control to manipulate. Whereas if we look at a video and go, okay, that hook rate is good, but can it be better? We can iterate.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get this, if we don't get somebody to stop on the scroll, then they won't do the rest of the stuff.
No, I guess as well, it's sort of, for us then, we're almost encouraged to think more about the person from a sort of almost less of a data-driven and more psychological, more emotional sense.
Exactly.
Which, I mean,
yes.
I've always loved that psychological side of it. So
Yeah.
I think that's what is very exciting about what we do. Because ultimately, I've said it a million times before, people like people buy from people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the data shows that going with that approach is the way to go.
Yes.
So and that's really, really interesting.
Exactly. And I think, so when I say understanding your audience, it's not, Mary, female, hooray. Like,
sure,
it's not
the criteria.
Like,
it's
exactly
what does Mary dream of?
Exactly.
What's
keeps
her
her up
goals?
at night?
What does she worry about? Yeah, that's really interesting. So you talked there a little bit about grabbing attention, and I've talked a little bit about before in the past about the hook.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about what the hook is and why the hook matters almost more than anything.
Yeah. So you've got different types of hooks. You've got like a verbal hook, so what's actually being sort of said if there is somebody in the video to camera or whatever. So that's going to be leaning into like those pain points or those desires.
Sure.
Then you have a visual hook. So, something that grabs attention. There's, there's a lot of stitching happening at the moment where you've got those viral videos where, I don't know, somebody trips over. Carousels does this really well. And then they cut that into their video.
I saw one this morning, actually. And again, you see it a lot where someone will like throw a bucket of water over people, run into their shop and close the doors. And they'll be like, oh, people are desperate to try and get in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really effective because it's going viral anyway. Yeah. So people see that and they instantly relate to it. So you've hooked them, basically.
Yeah.
So that's one way of hooking. Like text overlays, things like that. So what is that? The words that are actually on the first frame of the video as well is super important. And again, that's why that goes back to the knowing the audience.
Yes.
Because what we're going to say.
Do you have? Okay, so this is a two-part question. Do you have a personal preference of those hooks, and do you know one that usually performs better?
I like a combination of all of them.
Okay.
To be fair,
So it's the answer, it depends.
I was trying to not say that.
Okay. Well, I've said it now.
But you said it.
So
It depends.
Archie, you got to put that in.
It depends. It depends. But that's why, we're not just going to have one video with one hook in it.
Yeah.
We're going to have different videos. And again, it's not about recording 5 different videos. It's the core video and then just adding on 3 or 4 different hooks at the start.
Nice. I like it. I think it's
But it's test and learn, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, we joke about it, but the reason why we have an overlay for it depends is because so often it does. So it is very interesting. Okay, then. So talking about like text overlays, how important is it to capture the attention? I know we said it's 3 seconds you want to capture it in. So how can you use that text to capture that attention? Like, is there any specifics that you can do to the text in terms of like how much information do you need to share? What's the go-to way of doing it?
My default approach to, if you're using a text overlay as part of your visual hook, is to immediately call out what the product or service is.
Okay.
Or who it's for.
Sure.
So if we take a client, for example, where they do bed linen, and a frustration of somebody that's buying bed linen might be that they have bought a brand of duvet that is difficult to find sizing for.
Right.
So your overlay hook might be struggling to find the perfect size duvet to fit or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it immediately leans into the pain point of somebody that's been trawling around for days
yeah.
trying to find the perfect duvet.
And with that being a question,
Yeah.
people will automatically answer that in their head, regardless of whether they want to. So, that's just another way of grabbing their attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really, really good. And I think what's interesting is, I would say, based on my experience, it's almost less is better.
Yes.
You kind of want to say what you need to say in a simpler way as possible. I always use the quote, which I think is Einstein, but it's, if you can't explain something in the simplest way possible, you don't know it well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's so true for what we do.
Agreed.
Because you just need to, and it often takes a lot of thought and testing. To really narrow it down. And again, you've got to really understand who the target audience is, because, I mean, I'm a fan of, we were literally talking about this the other day. I'm quite a fan of a pun when it comes to these things. So I think you came up with one for, again, it was bed linen, which was, I think it was struggling to find the right fit duvet. We've got you covered.
Yeah,
which
I'm such a genius.
So good. I love that. And for me personally, that's something that would make me go, I quite like that.
Exactly.
But there might be some cases where that doesn't work for people, and actually you need to focus on either something maybe a little bit more negative or maybe a little bit more positive, and it really, really does. It changes based on the audience.
That's a very good point, actually, because you've got, in terms of hooks, you've got like negative hooks, which is what I sort of described there in terms of the pain point. Then you've got positive, because it might be that what would resonate more with somebody is the quality and the softness of the product. And going right back to the beginning in terms of creative doing the targeting, if we only have messaging, if we're sort of letting Meta do its AI stuff with the targeting, and we're using creative to do it, if we only talk about bed linen sizing, we're alienating 80% of the rest of the audience that doesn't care. They know their size, but what about the quality? What about the brushed cotton? All of that kind of thing.
Before we go any further, if you're enjoying today's Tea Talk, you'll love our Grow with Evergreen podcast. Specifically created for home, garden and lifestyle brands, it's a podcast dedicated to discussing paid media and marketing. Every episode, we're joined by a brand that wants to grow online. We delve into their business, dissect what they're doing, and define a digital growth strategy they can take and deploy into their business. And best of all, you get to listen or watch along, then take those learnings into your own business. Make sure you check it out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But for now, let's get back to today's Tea Talk.
So then I guess the question then that I'd like to ask actually then is, how much is too much? When does it become a problem to try and fit all of those things in one ad?
They wouldn't be in one ad. That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would only focus on one thing.
So we would have like a messaging hook framework that says we're going to try these 5 hooks for duvet sizes.
Okay.
We're going to try these 5 hooks, because if they get an ad that is not relevant to sizing, then they'll get the next ad, and Meta will very quickly work it out.
Perfect.
So they'll just put that ad in front of more people.
This is why having a paid social expert.
Don't get me mixed up with paid search.
No, I'm sorry. It's because I'm waiting, Lou's in the background, waiting for her turn. But no, that's brilliant. I love that so much.
There's a little analogy thing that I like to do.
Yeah.
Where it's, if I was to invite everyone from the agency, maybe all of our clients, to a picnic.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I packed was Greg's sausage rolls. That would actually be relatable to like the whole audience.
Would love it.
But also, who I invited to that picnic is somebody that is vegan, somebody that's celiac, somebody that's on a fitness journey, whatever. So I've then alienated so much of my invitee or my audience, and it works the same. So if we said the Greg sausage rolls was, I don't know, just promotional messaging, then what about all of the other people that are more interested in, is this for me? Social proof, you know, they're not quite ready to convert yet. So I'm just talking to a really small audience. Whereas you want to broaden that out and talk to other items that you take to a picnic.
That's great.
But widens the audience.
Like Scotch eggs.
You know.
Perfect.
Fruit.
Yeah. So, okay. Going on then to, I want to talk a little bit more about almost specifications with creative then. If somebody's looking to do creative on Meta,
Yeah.
what do they need to consider when it comes to, say, for example, aspect ratios?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is always looking at a creative mix.
Yeah.
So video, images, carousels, that kind of thing. It arms us as advertisers with more data to optimize and scale, but it also gives Meta more breathing space. And then in terms of, if we say Meta and placements, you're going to have square or 4x3 in feed, and then 9x16 in stories, for example. And then there's other considerations to factor in terms of safe zones on stories and reels, because they add a lot of UI
bane
stuff.
of my life.
Yeah, which does then actually end up being that you only have a really small amount of space to work
and it's
with.
a really awkward shape.
It is, yeah.
Because some of it is thinner than the rest of it. So, and it's not even the center that you get the most space. It's slightly higher, which can be frustrating.
Another challenge with that as well on that placement is when we have a feed ad, you have copy and headlines.
Yes.
Whereas when you take up the whole of a reel or story placement, you don't have any accompanying copy with it.
No, you don't.
So that might be when you're getting briefs from us, we might ask for more stuff to be included, say, in terms of the actual overlays and text on the asset itself.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the luxury of having copy and headlines that go alongside with that.
And that's really interesting. You almost need to make two versions in a sense.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, and it's something that a lot of people I think would miss.
Yeah.
And I can imagine it would greatly impact it in a negative way.
Yeah, and I think it depends on where you are. Like, I wouldn't want that to deter somebody from advertising. Say you're a really early business, you've got low budget. Having a square 1x1 image in a story is not going to not work.
Yeah,
but it won't be as effective. We, the luxury of having a creative team and those sort of strategies with our clients, we can have those different placement options, and that does statistically improve results. Having those specific placement creatives.
Quick question then, because I'm interested from a personal point of view.
Yeah.
Image, carousel, video. Any standouts?
It depends.
Okay.
This is one of the things that I do find is that we'll do testing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, carousels don't work for my brand.
Okay.
So we're not going to do any carousels anymore.
Right.
Or videos don't work, or images don't. I mean, videos very rarely don't work. But it depends what you're putting in it.
It does.
So,
yes, because just because you're doing a video doesn't mean it's going to work best every time.
Exactly.
If it's a terrible video, it's a terrible video.
Yeah. You might have a terrible video and a really well thought out image or carousel ad that will perform better, not because it's a carousel or not because. So in terms of like paid social and the platform, it's not favouring any in terms of the type.
I was going to ask, because my next question there was going to be, if it depends, as we say, then does the platform specifically try to push any of them, or does it have no bias?
It will have bias if we launch a campaign with images, carousels, and video at the same time, and
what is that?
It can see people that are responding more to the video.
Okay.
It will push that more, and it will push more budget into that.
But generally, it gives everything a fair shot.
A fair shot to start with, yeah. And then it's my job, our job as paid social advertisers to go, okay, why did the video perform better? What's wrong with the image? And then we might brief in some new images to test.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. So then I guess just to finish up, last question is about sort of content-wise. So we've talked a little bit more about the sort of the structure of it, the data-y stuff. But actually, when it comes to what you're actually going to put in your ads, what is the best way to go, in your opinion? And don't say it depends.
Depends where the customer is in the buyer journey.
Yeah.
And
actually, that's a really good point, because I was actually looking at one of your briefs just yesterday. And what I found really, really interesting was how you'd done the funnel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because I think you are absolutely right. It depends where the customer is on their journey.
Exactly. And me and Erin spoke a bit about this in the last Tea Talks, is that it does depend on the type of content. I think for me, as an overarching, when you're thinking about paid social and ads, don't make them like ads.
Yes.
Make them as native to the platform as possible.
Yeah.
So there are some proven ad concepts that work really well. And I mean, obviously, I'm only 3 weeks in, so we haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah.
But in terms of how the briefs will evolve and things like that, when they hit your desk, obviously, I've already started doing the sort of like funnel strategy. But it will also be about... I've just completely lost where I was going.
That's all right.
What did you ask? Okay, back.
Okay.
Whilst it does depend on the customer journey, I think keeping authentic ads as if they were being posted organically is one.
Sure.
Obviously, we have to consider that and make them ad friendly.
Yes.
And there's that little bit.
They have to be a little bit like ads.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, you know, there's some proven ad concepts that work really well with like a WhatsApp conversation or an iMessage and things like that. When people are instantly drawn to, okay,
it's almost like it's that human nature thing of being a little bit nosy.
Yes.
I think you're right. It's that almost creating that authenticity. I mean, I've been scrolling through TikTok time and time again, and I stop on a video, I start to watch it, and a good 5 seconds in, I realize it's an ad.
Yes.
Because they've
basically
just done like someone with their phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And I almost feel like, oh, I can't believe I didn't realize that. I mean, it doesn't help now that with TikTok, people sell things on TikTok Shop, and they will literally just make out like, I can't believe this has happened. And someone set the price and it's too low. Someone's going to get fired. I feel like that's too far in the other direction.
I think it's striking the right balance. I think we're at a time now where there's been a lot of stuff around AI and like fake ads, and I think people are just beginning to crave authenticity again. So overarching, what do I need to think about with creative and ads? Be authentic, be relatable, and if your brand allows it, be entertaining.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's this whole thing about UGC versus EGC, employee-generated content, and again, it's going back to what you were saying about curries.
Yeah.
How they are 100% going down this EGC route.
People are so nosy.
Yeah.
They love all that behind the scenes stuff. And I'm seeing that being a massive part of an ad strategy. And again, if we're going for a conversion, that's probably not going to be EGC. But if we're telling a brand story and we're just trying to get eyeballs on the brand and getting people in to know the brand to widen that audience, as I mentioned about with the picnic, that's probably going to be behind the scenes EGC or FGC. Founder generated content.
Ooh.
I just made that up. I don't know.
Wow.
But,
you heard it here first. I think that's a good place to finish up. I think we've done a whole lot of information there and all incredibly useful. I can't wait to sit down with you again and keep talking.
So
we could go on and on.
I can sit here all day talking about this.
So thank you so much for watching at home. Thank you, Matt, for joining me here.
Thanks for having me
on the set. Make sure, if you haven't already, that you are subscribed to us, because I think about 90% of the people who watch aren't subscribed. And we are on that 500 creep. We are going to get there soon. Archie will tell me shortly just how many we have to go. Last time I checked, it was 6.
So I reckon me and Lou will tip it over.
Less than that. It's less than 3.
No, us being on the pod is going to tip it.
It will. We are 3 away. So if you are watching right now, you could be that 500th person. So make sure that you subscribe and check out all of the other things that we're doing at the Evergreen Agency. But for now, I'll say goodbye and see you next time.